Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that affirmative action, which is a code word for black privilege, is, well, obviously unconstitutional, and colleges can no longer deny the applications for white and Asian students while approving those of black students who have lower test scores in order to increase diversity. But before you celebrate, Justice John Roberts made sure to leave a major loophole in the decision, which Harvard has already openly admitted that they're going to exploit. So nothing's really going to change, but this is a good start, and it is fun to see the liberal media meltdown. The New York Times complains that the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action, black privilege, could have ramifications for businesses and their diversity efforts, their anti-white efforts, possibly setting the stage for future challenges to such programs. Well, let's hope so. NBC News says the Supreme Court's affirmative action ruling will have far-reaching consequences for black and Latino students hoping to attend medical school and, in turn, only worsen the health disparities among people of color across the country. We can only hope that this affects medical school, because if there's one profession where you definitely want somebody who is qualified for the job and wasn't a diversity hire, it's a doctor. And this part about increasing the health disparities among people of color is because there have been studies that show many black people don't trust white doctors and don't take their advice because they're white. So they need a black doctor who can better understand them and the struggles that they've had to face as a black person in America in the 21st century.
And research shows that when we have a more diverse physician workforce, there's more understanding and more trust between the patient and the doctor. If the doctor has an understanding of the patient's cultural experiences, cultural background, lived experiences, especially when it comes to racism or discrimination or other aspects of their life, that can help with that physician-patient relationship. And we also see that patients are more likely to follow a physician's medical advice if they do have a feeling of being heard and understood. So all this plays a role in really improving public health.
Ketanji Brown Jackson, an affirmative action beneficiary, a diversity hire herself, who was chosen by Joe Biden to sit on the Supreme Court because she's black, is perhaps the hardest hit and calls the decision a tragedy. It's a tragedy. Justice Sotomayor, another diversity hire that Obama picked for the Supreme Court, says that the devastating impact of this decision cannot be overstated. The majority's vision of race neutrality will entrench, meaning non-racism, meaning you're chosen by your merit, not because you're black, and we feel sorry for what happened to your ancestors 150 years ago. It will entrench racial segregation in higher education because racial inequality will persist so long as it is ignored. But before you get too excited, you should hear what Harvard had to say about the decision. They were one of the defendants in the case, and they released this statement saying that the black privilege and the systemic anti-whiteism and anti-Asian hiring practices will continue because of the loophole, saying, "Dear members of the Harvard community, today the Supreme Court delivered its decision in Students for Fair Admission v. President and Fellows of Harvard College. The court held that Harvard College's admission system does not comply with the principles of the Equal Protection Clause embodied in Title IV of the Civil Rights Act. The court also ruled that colleges and universities may consider in admission decisions, quote, an applicant's discussion of how race affected his or her life, be it through discrimination, inspiration, or otherwise," end quote. We will certainly comply with the court's decision. That is a passive-aggressive statement. That is sarcasm, saying that they're going to continue to favor black applicants if in the application, in the essay portion, if they just describe their delusions of how hard it was being a black person in America in the 21st century. Or like this student who got accepted to Stanford for writing the hashtag Black Lives Matter over and over and over again 100 times on the application. This might be a good time to reintroduce my definition of black privilege, which I describe as undue favoritism granted to black people in America due to exploiting grievances about injustices in the distant past and laying guilt trips on white people in order to subvert equal rights and blind justice, often stemming from false perceptions of racism where none exists, or fabricating instances of racism in order to leverage power over white people. This tweet about the ruling went mega viral, causing people to have intense debates and question whether or not it's a parody account, because it is that crazy where it could be either or. This is from a troll account. This is not even a real person. This is most likely an AI generated image, and a person claims to have worked for the Biden administration, but did tweet this out, duping many people because many liberals are this insane. Today's Supreme Court decision is a direct attack on black people. No black person will be able to succeed in a merit-based system, which is exactly why affirmative action-based programs were needed. Today's decision is a travesty. This, however, is not a parody. This is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s actual response to the ruling, which is going to let a lot of people down. I was quite surprised to see how many people put him on a pedestal, even calling for him to be Trump's running mate, to create a unity ticket and all this stuff. And while I respect his work to raise awareness about some of the dangers of vaccines and more recently atrazine, a lot of people are apparently not familiar with some of his other issues and stances, because he says regarding the Supreme Court banning affirmative action in higher education, I know many Americans feel that purely race-based decisions are unfair. However, this feeling misses important context. The effects of racist policies going back centuries are now self-perpetuating. I would actually say they were reversing. Really, the oppressed have obviously become the oppressors, but that's obvious. He goes on to say, affirmative action understands this and uses race-based policies to undo the effects of racist policies. So RFK Jr. still believes in the hoax of systemic white supremacy and white privilege in 21st century America, a country that 15 years ago elected a black man as president of the United States and wouldn't have gotten to that position if it weren't for all the white people in America who voted for him. I'm sorry, but it's long overdue that black people stop complaining about slavery. Do you hear white people complaining about losing their ancestors in the Civil War in order to free the slaves? Think about the sacrifices that white people made in order to get black people where they're at today. Not to mention all of the affirmative action programs and the welfare. They have more than been compensated. Today, in order to find the source of all of their problems, all they need to do is look in the mirror. Isn't that right, Stephen A. Smith?
When we gonna look at ourselves when it comes to black people being killed in the streets of America? I don't even want to get into what happened in Chicago, but I have no choice.
Oh, you mean how, like, every single weekend there's 20 to 30 black people who shoot each other? And during 3-day weekends during the summer, like Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July, and Labor Day, it's usually around 50 or more.
This past Memorial Day weekend, from Friday to Monday, at least 53 people were shot, 11 fatally, according to police.
Well, like I said, that's an average 3-day weekend during the summer, sir, in the black community in Chicago.
If one black person was killed by the police,
there'd be rioting across the country.
We'd raise holy hell, and in some cases, there'd be riots in the streets.
Many cases, most cases. But you're not supposed to talk about black crime. And so the liberal media and now police departments are trying to cover it up, because when you actually look at these statistics, that 13% of the population were responsible for 60% now, not 50, 60% of the violent crime in America. It tends to reflect poorly on a certain group of people. And so the San Francisco Police Department, at least, and I'm sure others, are now censoring the mugshots of people who are arrested because, well, a lot of them tend to fit a certain demographic and causing people to kind of, connect too many dots. So they're not releasing those mugshots anymore in San Francisco. The city of Baltimore is suing the car companies Kia and Hyundai because too many black people are stealing too many of those cars, because apparently they're a little bit easier to steal. And so a certain demographic is taking advantage of that. And so instead of maybe keeping them in jail when they do that, or trying to stop the fatherlessness problem in certain communities, or the drug problem, or trying to stop the glorification of thug culture. The city is now blaming the car manufacturers for black people stealing them. Oh, and by the way, here is the dean of Berkeley's law school, Erwin Chemerinsky, openly admitting that he engages in systemic anti-whiteism, violating California and federal law when it comes to hiring faculty members, and is encouraging other schools to do the same.
What I mean by unstated affirmative action is, what if the college or university doesn't tell anybody, doesn't make any public statements, but still wants to? I'll give you an example from our law school, but if ever I'm deposed, I'm going to deny I said this to you. When we do faculty hiring, we're quite conscious that diversity is important to us. And we say diversity is important, it's fine to say that. But I'm very careful when we have a faculty appointments committee meeting. Anytime somebody says, we should really prefer this candidate over this candidate because this person would add diversity, don't say that. You can think it, you can vote it, but our discussions are not privileged, so don't ever articulate that that's what you're doing. Well, that works more easily with regard to faculty hiring. With regard to student admissions, it becomes more difficult because it's a statistical measure.
The systemic anti-whiteism in America has gotten so pervasive that even those who for years have been afraid to say what they were noticing can't help it because it's everywhere. And this 4th of July, we're going to celebrate what some amazing white people did by founding this great country. And this weekend, through the 4th of July, you can save 20% off of any of my shirts at markdice.com by using the promo code SummerVibes20 at the checkout. I didn't come up with the promo code. It's a little corny. My t-shirt distributor did, but it'll still save you 20% off of your Wanted for President shirt, your Conspiracy Theorists Were Right shirt, or any of my awesome designs. All available in a t-shirt, long sleeve, and a hoodie, and a whole bunch of different colors as well. So head on over to markdice.com or click the link in the description below. Enter the promo code SummerVibes20 at the checkout to save 20% off this weekend, and check them out.